Everyone is a leader. Everyone, because everyone is accountable and everyone has the capacity to influence. In my view, leadership is about action, not a position, something I learned 25 years back. And also, if I may suggest, that leaders don't require titles, and titles, fortunately, don't define leaders. The whole question of leadership is a bit confused in the minds of people. Let me just say that leadership is not just being a leader and doing things that is required to lead people, but it's also about being a good follower. So leadership and followership are something that we need to always remember. If I'm not a good follower, I can never be a good leader. Leaders are born and made, and is emphasized because this either-or tyranny is not really required. Psychology, the world of psychology has done research on whether we are what nature makes us or we are what nurture makes us. And the views are divided on this as well. I've come to a conclusion that three core aspects must be considered when discussing leadership. It is our attitude, our aptitude, and our attributes. Now, if you think about it, our attitude is what we acquire from the environment in which we are born, and our inborn capabilities are the attributes that we possess, and at the same time, the aptitudes, the desire, the inclination that we have to do certain things. Not everyone becomes a mountain climber, and neither does everyone desire to be a nurse or a teacher. Aptitudes and our attributes are God-given. We are born with them, and the attitude is what we acquire in the environment, the nurturing that we have had from our parents, from our teachers, from the environment largely. So if you ask me, ever since I came to Pakistan back 27 years ago, one problem that I've heard in our society is that of attitude. And frankly, that is one area which is the most underfunded, and if you ask me, an attitudinal shift will create a new Pakistan and nothing else. We need good attitudes. Mentors, in my view, are people you turn to and are open with and are free to discuss any concern, any confusion, any problem that you're facing. And there are no barriers between a mentee and a mentor. Mentors are also those who are dead, meaning their guidance is available to us even though they may not physically be present. And mentors are also those who are alive today and play an active role in my life. So I'll start with those who are no longer on this planet, but their legacy lives on. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ I regard as my principal mentor, and anything that is aligned with his guidance, his message, coming from any source is very welcome. On earth, there are two very significant personalities who passed away recently. Agha Hassan Abdi Marhoom, who founded not only the United Bank Limited back in the 50s, but also Bank of Credit and Commerce, known as BCCI. He had a global vision, and whatever he would speak about was about humanity largely and service. And I recall that having joined starting my career back in 1976 with this bank, that was in 72 countries. And of course, my father, my mother, both have continued to play a huge role in my life, in the sense that they talk about integrity and have encouraged that no matter what you do, make sure your words mean something and you lead a life that is significant. And I must say that these sources and others have been very, very useful for me. I also find guidance from, indirectly, from a lot of movies that I watch, and I will of course recommend a few when I'm given the opportunity. When you ask about young people, first I must qualify that young people are those who are young in attitude, and age is only a number for them. And therefore I can include the whole of Pakistan in this category, provided they are youthful in their attitude. Having said that, what skills do they require? Look at the world, the way it's changing. Creativity and analytical skills, they do challenge each other and oppose each other, but both are necessary. But there are 5 key ideas that I want to share here that we all need to have as successful individuals, and particularly focusing on those who have a lot of energy, particularly the young. Firstly, they must not only understand themselves, but also know how their behavior affects others. Second, they must understand how they react to others. Third, they must maximize on what they do well, which is unusual. Most people don't have an idea as to what it is they excel in. Number 4, they must be positive about themselves in order for others to have confidence in them. And lastly, and this is perhaps the most important, they must be able to adapt to different situations and people most effectively. The whole idea is to adopt in leadership an inclusive approach which encompasses diversity of all kinds. So all kinds of socio-economic groups, ethnicities, and other belief systems. Now, if our young people are able to embrace these ideas and move forward with a lot of faith in God and also on living by principle, then I feel that they will not only make a success of their own lives, but they'll create a positive impact in the environment and the sphere of influence they occupy. This is where I feel youths can excel. Leadership, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is not only their preserve, but it is also something that everyone they deal with have to be viewed as. We are leaders and we are followers. I work in a team of people at School of Leadership and Carnelian, and guess what? I am a follower in that scenario, in those teams, and at the same time when they give me a task which requires my leadership, I lead. But that's very rarely, it's not very often. Role of family in everyone's life is essential, and I'm no exception. When I look back at my journey from the time I gained consciousness to now, I've realized that if it wasn't for my family support and guidance that I got from them, I would never reach the point that I have. I'm living my dream today. I'm so grateful to God that my family not only supports me, but continues to give me the guidance I require. And I have a sounding board at home, which means that I'm able to filter my ideas before I go in public and make remarks which are meant to achieve a desired objective. To my right, I have my son Imad, who has recently returned from Canada after having lived there for almost 9 years. And I'm so happy to see that he has, out of his own volition, out of his own choice, chosen to move into this country and make a difference, as I have been trying to do. It is amazing how family can support and guide and help. And I would say that family is the most essential institution in any society. The stronger the family unit, the stronger the society, the stronger the institution. East is known for having a family set of values. And I would certainly urge our younger generation in particular to pursue this and not ever neglect the needs of family and to build from there. Very, very important to do that. I mean, I learned from my elders. By the way, my mentors also include my nieces and nephews, because they are in the generation where the world is seen by them in a way that I could never have. And therefore I consult with them, I check with them, and I get very honest, candid feedback, which I value and I cherish.
I've been very fortunate to grow up in a joint family system, and I value family, and I believe it is an essential part of an upbringing of a child. But I'll have to tell you that the amount of family members and the value that they're given me, I really never played much heedance to it until very recently, I would say about 10 years ago. And growing up in a joint family, yes, I had my dad, my mom, I also had my grandparents, I had my chacha-chachi, I had my puppy as well, and they all gave me a lot of great advice and a lot of great value. But the one common thing that they gave me every single time was do what you want, but just be great at it. And that really allowed me to express myself. That also allowed me to explore different opportunities, which is why growing up I've been an aspiring athlete, and surprisingly I'm not one today, but the lessons that I've learned, wanting to be a footballer, wanting to be a race car driver, wanting to be a basketball player in the NBA, all of those experiences have taught me a valuable lesson. And the idea of being able to express yourself without any obligations has to be the greatest advice from each and every one of them. So I do play who I am today as a success coach, as an organizational performance coach, really goes down to the family that has raised me and the advice that they've given me on my journey. Of course, the journey continues, but without a shadow of a doubt, I'm very grateful to the advice that I've been given.
There are plenty of things we can learn from. Nature, in my view, is something you didn't ask, but I feel is to be considered, because 93% of communication is non-verbal, and nature is speaking to us all the time. And if you talk about the environmental damage that we are doing as human beings, it's unbelievable. But it's when I go to the mountains, when I go to the sea, when I look at the greenery around me, that inspires me the most. And of course, that is supplemented by books, movies, and definitely some quotes that pick me up every morning. So the book that I would like to recommend, my favorite of ever since I grew up and I'm doing what I am, The Messenger by Tariq Ramadan. It is about the strategies that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ played, how he led his team and how he faced those challenges. It's written for non-Muslims, and therefore it has a very broad appeal, and I think this is a great service that he's done. The other book that I'm really fascinated by is by Yuval Noah Harari, A Brief History of Humankind. And Sapiens is a book which I think, in order to understand our origins and what makes us so unique and special and what our potential is, this book is a tremendous insight. The other one that my son recommended, and I obtained it, it's by Dr. Carol S. Dweck, Mindset. And I think it makes essential reading, and all of us need to adopt the growth mindset. Very important. And those who are in the business of transforming organizations and institutions ought to be familiar with McKinsey & Company. They're the ones who gave consulting the name, its history, how it got to where it is, why it's regarded so highly. I recommend the firm. And it's a story, the inside story of a world-class organization. I found this book also very, very inspiring. Of course, there are many more. As far as movies are concerned, Amistad is highly recommended. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. The other book that I would like to recommend, a movie rather, that I'd like to recommend is Dead Poets Society. That's the movie which got me into this profession. And I would say that the third movie that I felt, speaks volumes for the kind of challenges we face in this world is Blood Diamond. It moved me, it shook me up. And indeed, the Message movie by Mustafa Akkad, the story of how Islam came into being and what it stands for, the challenges, I think that is another movie that I would urge people to watch and get inspiration from. Again, I find books, movies, traveling, meeting different people, and trying out new experiences very, very important from a learning perspective. Very, very important. Just academics alone doesn't cut it.
My leadership philosophy is quite simple, and it boils down to 3 key words. Leaders create leaders. During my recent stint of 9 years back in Canada, I have witnessed a transformational change around this idea of leadership, where leadership once upon a time was the idea of holding a title or managing a team or holding a certain position. Nowadays, leadership is really about having an impact and creating global change for the better.
My message to the aspiring leaders as well as existing leaders is as follows. Please understand that all of us, you included, have power. Discover it within you, discover it around you, gain it and use it as wisely as you possibly can. Not just gaining it and using it, but please also find that you are able to share that power in a manner that serves the best interest not only of the community, but of your own sphere of influence. Sustaining that power is also something that you can do. And that happens when you make others more powerful. Sadly, we do not see many examples visibly of this happening. But I'm very, very encouraged by our youth who are learning these principles and are applying them in their everyday life. I wish all of us, those in the Parliament, those out there in communities and in businesses, please remember, as a leader of your life and of your team and of your community, you are as much a follower. Use whatever strength and power you have with vision, with responsibility, with discipline. Because if we want to be a free nation, we must individually and collectively also be very disciplined. This is at the heart of leadership, and I'm very glad that I was given the opportunity to speak to an audience that might benefit from my insight. These are perspectives I have shared, and I'm sure this subject is so vast that there are many who would also enrich and give a new slant to the subject.